stand there. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop. I'm super excited to introduce both Sam and Adam, neither of whom I think need any introduction to the people sitting in this room, but anybody watching online, I'm going to give a formal introduction of these two awesome people. They are both founding members of the SPLICE Institute. They are members of the SPLICE Ensemble with myself, and also both serve on the SPLICE board. Dr. Sam Wells, over there, is an assistant professor of music studies at Temple University. He is a Cycling 74 Max certified trainer and organizes the Max Meetup Philadelphia event series. He runs Scarp Records, a record label dedicated to highlighting experimental and improvisational practices of performer-composers. And he is also on the board of directors of Seamus, where he serves as the member at large. As you've seen this week, and will continue to see this week, he is a trumpet player and also a composer of immersive multimedia works, including a full-length concert work he did here, the Cottonwood Florigium, which we performed together a few years ago. Dr. Adam Vidiksis is also at Temple University, where he is an associate professor in the area head of the music technology program. He recently served as the composer in residence for the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia and was selected by the NEA and Japan-US Friendship Commission to serve as the Director of Arts and Technology for a performance of a new work during the 2020 Olympics in Japan. His multimedia work, The Floods, has been presented and performed as both concerts and installations all over the world, including here at SPLICE 2 years ago. So I'm super excited to hear what they're going to share with us, and I hand this mic over to Sam and Adam.
Thank you everyone, and thank you Keith. We are really excited to show you this work. It's part of an ongoing project that we have. And we're going to be talking about large-scale public sound art via this AI image classification and web audio app, and you'll get a chance to demo that today. We'll get to explore a little bit. So if you saw in the Discord, we asked if you wanted to, you could bring some small objects. The weirder the better. So Sam and I both said that we were gonna bring one. So hang on, Sam. I'll show you the one that I brought.
Oh.
I brought a chicken.
Thank you.
What did you bring?
You.
Oh! Walked right into that.
Yeah.
Okay, chicken can live right here.
All right, so this project that we're going to share, again, as Adam mentioned, is part of kind of this ongoing practice we have on these kind of large-scale public performances. But this specific project is called Oroscope. So Oroscope is a web-based musical instrument. It's a prototype in this series that we're working on. And it's designed for communal performances with smartphones. So we've been talking a lot about how, in my workshop in the mornings, how we can harness smartphones, in particular web browsers that are on most of these devices, and use the kind of synthesis and audio capabilities built into these devices already, and that are in almost nearly everyone's phones, and use them to make music together. So this particular project uses machine learning to identify objects using the phone's camera as kind of the primary mode of musical control. So it's not so much about any sort of user gesture or movement, but actually what is the software trying to identify. And so we use that to control the musical output, and we also use some sensor data from the phone's movement. So we really want these performances to encourage an exploration of the ways in which artificial intelligence is kind of affecting our lives, influencing decisions we've made, influencing the decisions that are made for us, and how this can kind of create understandings and misunderstandings in the world. So something I think is really interesting about this project and highlights how kind of a lot of projects can grow and evolve. This grew out of a separate project, a collaboration we're doing with the Little Artists League in Yokohama, Japan. This is an arts organization that focuses on kind of children arts programs, particularly with visually impaired children. At this project, some children will come to an exhibition space, do a lot of visual arts or kind of sculpture activities, and then we developed a piece of software that would take a photo of that and then turn that into sound so they could hear or interact with this visual objects in a sonic domain. So the original version of this project, you can see here, we built a max patch that after the project was completed, you could take a photo of it and upload it over the Wi-Fi network, over a local network that we set up. And then using the trackpad, you could kind of explore different areas of that specific project. So in this one, it was very kind of simple, just mapping different color hues to different sounds and timbres. I believe we did two different versions, one where it was kind of more just controlling a synthesis engine, and then the next one was more about vertical mixing of kind of different stems we had of a project, so the timbres and musical content would shift as you explored the artwork.
So yeah, to kind of talk about the iteration of these that led up to the larger Horoscope one, that original one had, again, the static image, so you couldn't interact with the drawing once it was completed, right? You would make a drawing, take a photo, upload it, and then be able to interact with it. So we wanted to also then, working with that organization, enable, you know, the children, the artists to be able to change the work that they're doing, not only with you know, kind of drawings, but also all sorts of other physical media, making puppets and paper mache and other types of art, and be able to interact with that. So we have a couple of different versions. One, for example, that had a VivaWare cell color sensor, so that you could really put that on anything. You know, it, again, was able to do both of the versions that we had, where more of the you know, lines, colors, hues, and things like that were more direct relationships, and others that use techniques like branching techniques, particularly used in, for example, video game scoring, like horizontal resequencing and vertical remixing. So you can kind of have more of a musical feel, or traditionally musical feel, that they might more easily recognize, that a child might more easily recognize, versus the actual more sonification, direct information about color and hue and things like that. So there's a documentary about one of these events, and we'll play a brief clip of it where you can see some of what's going on in the patch.
逆さま裏頭にもっとそう作品これピンクの音ここがすごい音が出るので違う紫に行ったらまた別のすごいしこういう感じ作ったお化けカラフルって言われても分かんないけどこの音から出るとこのいいんじゃないっていうので一生懸命このシステムを作ってそれで相談してみんなで作ってなんでもうこれだったらお化けにもういきなりテーマソングっていうお化けにしちゃうすげえさポップですねそうですねっていうので
So we were fortunate to be able to go over one of the times and be there at one of the exhibitions, and then seeing this documentary, as well as some other just sort of cell phone videos that our collaborators in Japan sent us, and it's so rewarding to see that the artists were having so much fun, you know, playing around with these things. That was really great.
So as we mentioned at the beginning of the talk, the kind of current prototype that we're going to explore together today is really starting to focus in on how AI is deeply integrated into our life. We're all this is always kind of like top of mind in a variety of ways. But so AI is just increasingly present in our life, whether it is through policing, employment opportunities, trying to format your resumes in the right way to get past the bots that are filtering out these, used in banking and more. And so since this is so tightly woven into everything that is going on in our lives, we think it's really essential for all of us to know the ways AI can understand, represent, misrepresent, and misunderstand things. So we're really interested with this project is just exposing kind of the cracks that can happen, the cracks that information can fall between, through no fault of the AI, but just through the nature of the way that it's constructed and the current models that we are using.
So Horoscope uses a machine learning image classifier model called MobileNet, which is kind of this lineage of something called ImageNet, which also builds on this open source word library that kind of has built-in classifications of what categories of things words are in the first place, and then that was built into an image class set, and then and was sort of streamlined for mobile. And it's integrated through ML5JS, which is also part of processing, if you're familiar with that. It has about 1,000 categories in its index, which is not that many, which is also why you will get lots of wrong answers, because there's many more things that it might see through the camera. But when you have something that has that lower resolution, you're more easily able to see. So the idea is not, how good is this AI, but more understanding what happens when something goes wrong, like when it does not get this. So using a lower resolution model allows for these things to happen, like Sam was saying, for what happens when the information falls through the cracks. And one of the things I think we're all very familiar with now is that oftentimes the AI is extremely confident in what it's seeing, right? So it's partly or that's perhaps a slippery term to use for that. The word confidence is used to describe that, but it's not actually how confident the AI is, but rather how closely it matches something within its index. But this miscommunication or misunderstanding that can happen between the machine, the way it's designed, and the users is an important thing to try to play with and elucidate in our minds. So again, larger models will make the cracks smaller, but ultimately not eliminate them, right? There's going to be always some place in between where these things exist, unless these models get equal to the resolution of the universe. But so we're hoping that to develop through this project a way to engage with this that's playful, somewhat fun, and allows people to explore on their own, and rather than kind of be straightly didactic about it. So these are some of the things that are in the categories. So you can see there's some really interesting and funny things that you would maybe not likely come across, like there is an axolotl, which, there's a lot of pictures, Minecraft has made axolotls extremely popular, so that's around more. But, there's other things on here like a cuirass, and, rapeseed, or things like this. So, it's kind of interesting what's in there and what is not.
So, taking this kind of concept about AI that we want to explore, we start to develop some interactive performance strategies. So with this app, the initial performance, this is a picture from the Arts and Quality of Life conference at Temple University in February 2024, I believe. And we invited the attendees to bring in a variety of physical objects, just like we've invited you to bring in some objects into the space, to see kind of a wide variety of objects through the lens of this app and how they are identified. Audience members are also encouraged to draw images and see how that affects the sounds with the app. And the idea is these elements really diversify the range of interactive possibilities. It's not possible for us to test the app on everything, so it's kind of interesting to see how different inputs can create different results. Another guiding principle for this was trying to create this communal sense of the work. So the software is designed to be performed by any number of players, and each user's phone generates a unique musical output. So again, this kind of goes back to, we're deciding to use a browser-based sound generation, so each user can synthesize the sound on their phone. They are bringing their own voice with this instrument to the performance. But also means it is scalable by the number of devices that are available, and pretty much most people, especially that are going to attend an event like this, probably have a smartphone that has a browser, which means it is almost certainly capable of running this software. It can be performed by a single person all the way up to the number of phones or computers that are in a room. So the larger the ensemble, the more kind of simultaneous variation we have going on, which increase the complexity, spatial immersion, and just the atmospheric quality of the performance. So this is a video from the initial performance from February of last year.
I like how I was in that place. But after that, I was two people.
So we're gonna open it up to do the brief demo version so that you can get a sense of what it is on your own phones. And this is often what we'll offer to the performers of the piece, the people that are coming to try and get people who might not be familiar with using electronics in this way, what the types of things that they might do. So for a group like this, you know, I guess it's always good to be reminded to listen carefully, but it's something that we practice all the time. But, you know, other people might be a little more timid and think they have to stay in their seat, or, you know, not be willing to get up without the prompt. So this is something that we offered for the public in general, or that we offer to the public in general, often when we have these types of things. So, you know, oftentimes, again, we will bring things like paper and crayons into the space, and if you have anything like that, feel free to, you know, go ahead and draw some things and see what it does. So, there are a few things that you need to do first, as you often know if you've done anything on your phone. So please turn the volume all the way up and make sure that it's not in silent mode. And then we will have a QR code and URL on the next slide. So once you see that QR code, then you tap on the screen, click to start, and you will get 2 prompts that you need to give permission for the camera and for motion data access. All right, and then we will do, yeah, well, it's like, we'll do about 6-minute performance on here, it's 4, and then we'll ask you to stop your phone or fade the volume down towards the end. All right, let's do it. Yeah, feel free to move around so that you can get some different things, you know, come see the chicken.
It is. What is it?
get a description? That's okay. My internet's good.
So once it runs, once it's on, it shouldn't
I mean, Carpenter's Toolkit.
Have you tried your tattoos yet? No. That makes sense. Ski mask, punching bag, cowboy boot. Cowboy. Punching bag, punch ball.
You doing your tattoos?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
As you should.
Punching bag. That's not nice.
Why are you such a punch bag? He's telling me that about you as well. That's funny. Can't tell the We've been doing tattoos.
It got Mike.
How white is he?
They all change sound at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to change based on the object. It's all the same sound.
Like cowboy boot. Well, something that says it's funny.
So Ted said that when he put
Screener, that's
the app on you, that you were a one-armed man. So that you Oh, it does shift to different sections. You know, it's an individual thing that it only goes up in register.
Oh, that's a PA system. That's why I did so bad. Let's see. Ooh, is it a bathtub? Is it a projector?
Getting a projector. I only see desk, wash bowl, billiard table, joystick.
Bathtub.
I really want to try something though. It's almost right. Carpenter's kit, toolkit.
A toy shop.
It looks so cool, right?
Doesn't it look so nice?
just might want to get a video of that.
Oh my god.
For a second,
Sorry.
It means I am useful. I present
Ooh, what an ending. You guys really are good. So this has kind of been an ongoing process, especially with this, the mobile app one. You know, like we kind of showed you some of the things that we're coming off of with the Little Artist League stuff, but this is very much in the development and work in progress stage. So we'll talk a little bit more about where we're hoping to head with this and the more finalized version towards the end. But for now, we'll kind of go through, and a bunch of people are asking questions about how things work. So we'll go through some of the compositional approaches, some of the technical approaches, and things like that.
So, just kind of want to go over quickly about like how this was working compositionally. And so one of our goals with this instrument is that not only is it like accessible to anyone because they likely have a smartphone and they can use it, but there's also it's very intuitive to a large degree. You should be able to pick it up and through trying out anything you can think of, start to hear how things change. You might be hearing changes and not sure why, and you try different things. So it's kind of intuitive in that way. But we still, both composers and co-composing this work, and really have a hard time relinquishing all control. So we wanted to shape this work a bit. So the changes in the musical activity, the more local changes in the piece, are mainly tied to the confidence reading we get from the MobileNet algorithm, which states basically, kind of colloquially, it would be like, I am 12% sure that is a chair. All right, so kind of like that 12%, we're taking that number, or 0.12, as a value to control musical parameters. We're also adding in motion accelerometer data from the phone to do more subtle changes in the sounds, but we are going back to wanting this piece to explore these kind of AI models. We really wanted confidence to be the primary driver of like performative change in the piece. But also to maintain this interest and add some kind of formal change. Notice we did 3 sections. We started with, which happened to be section 2, and we ended there. Actually, I think maybe we ended up doing 5 sections. And these are actually just looping one into the next, and we are just running this off of the clock. Like, what time is it after the start of an hour? And everyone's phone is probably going to be within about a second of each other, if not, you know, a much tighter resolution. And we found that sufficient to kind of sync these large global changes. And so again, just kind of, as we've been like reiterating, we chose confidence as the primary mode of change because that is what we want to highlight, that the AI, even no matter what it is identifying, it is deciding how confident it is about it. And looking at that continuum, and then also that it is always giving you an answer, even if it has like no idea what it is, or it's at very low confidence. It's still going to say that chair is a chair, or this chicken is a chair, even if it's 1% short. It's still going to tell you an answer in every situation.
So getting into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, the sound components happen in Rainbow, which most of you are probably at least somewhat familiar with, or that it exists. It's a sort of an extension of Max that allows for export to the web and to C++ and to all these other different types of things. So we are doing the sound composition in Rainbow. And we're receiving the phone, whatever phone data that we're using, the camera, the camera data, the accelerometer data, and things like that, as well as the ML5JS data as inputs into Rainbow, and then doing the sound stuff there. So this image shows, for example, section 2. So this is sort of what the patch looks like for the composition of section 2. So here, confidence influences the generation of increasingly wide-ranging pitch spaces and activity via harmonicity and modulation index of the note patterns.
All right, so we mentioned some of these kind of design principles we had for this project, but we really want this to be intuitive. This idea that anyone could pick it up and start working with it and get feedback of how to use it, right? They don't need to be taught how to use the instrument. That is explorative in terms that what you're seeing and the input you're getting back from it visually and what the identifications are encourages you to go try it on something else. And then also that it is playful. Hopefully it is silly. Hopefully it's just kind of fun. This is not it's a pretty heavy concept we're trying to explore, but we're hoping to do it in a way that is lighthearted and kind of takes a lot of the dire risk out of the situation. So to achieve this, we wanted a really simple user interface, all right? If it's intuitive, you shouldn't have to have like a manual about how to use the software. You open it up and it just kind of starts working. And also we wanted to just overlay the machine learning recognition in real time. So something we did that we feel very strongly about, you are seeing basically the unadulterated output of the algorithm. We're not going to filter out anything that it's providing. We're not going to try to skew it in any way towards results. You're getting what it recognizes, 1 to 17 objects, potential objects, and then what the confidence reading is. Another thing we did, harnessing the motion data. In the initial version we had, it was a much more prominent feature and really affected the sound, and it kind of just turned into these like faux lightsaber battles between people. So we feel like they got a little kind of away from our main focus, so we kind of toned that down a little bit. But that goes back to the explorative nature of it. You do get some feedback from moving it that's hoping to cause you to move your phone around. The result, the sound is controlled by what the phone sees and how it moves around.
So we've mentioned a bunch of these things, but kind of to give you a picture of how all of these things are working together, right? So everything is coming together in HTML, and then we have these different aspects that are talking to each other in these different ways, right? So for example, JavaScript, which is the main way that we're actually connecting all of these things together, the web audio API that we're accessing in order to be able to do this and be able to talk to Rainbow, which we already described, the P5JS, which is mainly housing the ML5JS, and we're using the P5JS to get the camera just to capture the image, essentially. So that then everything else is happening in the ML5JS, which is part of that. So here's sort of the overview that you can see how things are connecting in this way. So everything is kind of coming back to that JS file that's kind of talking to each other, and you see things like the event mapping, the Rainbow patch over on the left side, and all these things are kind of coming. Then again, the JS in the middle is going out to the HTML, which is also pulling in some, like a style sheet image. So again, here's just another, if you're visual in this way, another way that you can kind of see how all these things are talking to each other. And ultimately, obviously, this is all kind of reciprocal with the phone itself, right? So some of these things are in a feedback loop with each other.
Great, and actually I'm going to jump back one slide. I just want to kind of mention some of the challenges with this. So we developed this so that we're dealing with a lot of different JavaScript modules that we're then bundling up into a single website. So one of the tricky things with this is we have all these kind of modules and getting them to talk to each other and react to things happening. So the way we did this, to kind of get a little more into the nitty gritty, is we have, you can see, kind of in the bottom center to the right, we have a data singleton. Basically, we have a JavaScript module that is creating a single object, and we're limiting it so it cannot ever, basically it's a class where only one instance is ever created. And we've limited it so there cannot be more than one. And this object is kind of like a hub of information that all the other modules reference. So that's how we're passing motion data around, what the current confidence reading is. So it can be grabbed by P5.js. It can be grabbed by the app.js file, which is where most of the web audio is happening. Additionally, we are using the event emitter node package to when new motion data comes in that's above a certain threshold, or new kind of confidence readings, it is triggering events and sending messages to our Rainbow device to trigger musical output.
So, kind of talking through some conclusions that we've had before we get into some questions. Like we said, this is a work in progress that you know, we've been essentially workshopping with some crowds, and we're grateful for your feedback today and things like that, and trying it out. And we're really, I think we're feeling like we're on the cusp of what might be something like the final version. So it kind of feels like also a shift. You know, like I said, over the different iterations that we've had, we've really come to some conclusions around, like you've heard many, many times, that confidence is really kind of the idea here, right? Is like kind of the thing that sticks out to us as this really important thing. In some of the even early drafts that we talked about, so we thought maybe, oh, if it identifies something within a certain class, maybe the music then is like that thing. And we realized that it just was all sort of noise to the main thing, the main gist of what we were trying to get at. Same thing with the, as Sam mentioned, with the accelerometer data, and you know, like turning into lightsaber fights, right? We're like, let's really hone this down. So I think we're starting to feel like we're on the cusp of the thing, which is all really about confidence. I think some other things that we've really been able to work out is some workflow things around developing for mobile phones. I mean, there's like mastering issues and things like that, and thinking about, you know, taking your best guess if you're using like, you know, typical audio monitors that you might have in your studio, and trying to assume what it's going to sound like on a mobile device is very challenging. So we've really found some efficiencies in figuring out that, you know, some other steps as well. And working with Rainbow on this type of scale, we've also kind of figured some things out with compiling times and things like that that are some efficiencies. So I think we're ready probably to be moving on into the final phase of this, and we'd be great to answer your questions as well as hear any feedback you have as we're starting to decide on that last phase of this project. So thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
When the sound changes from the higher distance sound to the lower sound, is that going through a message?
So there's nothing that's going through the server. Once for this version, once it's on your phone, then that's it. Like if you shut off Wi-Fi or cellular, it would still run. So that's all, like Sam was saying earlier, so the sort of moment-to-moment, second-to-second things are all determined by either confidence or minimally the motion data. Usually that's going to create just much more subtle changes. The big structural changes in the piece, the formal changes, are just on the clock. So, yeah. Sure. Oh, thanks. Ed? Mm-hmm. I did go through every single one and read them. As in, why did we use this particular model, or were the categories? Mm-hmm, yeah. That's a great question. The categories themselves are pretty tame generally. Because this particular data set is largely based on plants and animals and fairly mundane objects, where I think that there's been some sauciness is actually so it doesn't have, for example, it purposely does not have anything that is a person. Right? So anything like person or any body part of a person, anything having to do with a human is not on there. So when you point it at humans, it still tries to make a decision. And that can be sometimes really funny, but also sometimes, not good. So that's actually, I think, where some of that comes out when it's, in this case, it never does. So one of the things that I think this also gets at is we talked at some points about training a model. And we quickly realized, well, two things. One, that we wanted to use something that existed already. Because if we're training a model, we're sort of, again, skewing things towards, if we're using something that already exists, we're hopefully showing those cracks that we didn't build ourselves, right? If we're showing cracks and it's like, and see how broken it is? It made less sense. So, and we also wanted to use something that was open source and trained on open source, so that the intellectual property was available and wasn't trained on anything that people hadn't consented to. So those were the two things that's what led us to pick this particular model. But yeah, so I think that's probably the most interesting thing, somewhat politically. Sure. Yeah, that's a cool idea. That's really, yeah. Was there anything you wanted to add about that? That's great. Well, let's go to Carter Boyd.
Sure. So obviously, on this scale, it's not nearly as big of an issue, but a few people noticed that their phones got incredibly hot doing this, because the processor on the phone has to work very hard to do this, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the growing concerns among all sorts of people is the environmental impact of AI models and all these things running, right? Water usage in particular, but emissions and heat. In theory, everyone's phones probably just burn through 3 to 4% that they otherwise wouldn't have, right? Which we will then charge and use later. So what are your just thoughts as artists and people living in the world on environmental impacts of AI and how we're choosing to adopt that in either artistic or social practices? Yeah, that's a really important question. I mean, in fact, we had a whole panel about that at SPLICE not a few years ago, you probably remember, which is something that's particularly, so it's true of all these things that we're doing with all this technology, but I think it's particularly true because of the power, like you mentioned, it's extreme compared to what we've done, but with other technologies, for example. But to my mind, and I'll turn it over to Sam, it is, I think, a matter of degree and not kind. I mean, we're already doing this. We're already mining rare earth to make all the things that we use at SPLICE. I mean, the technology is, a big part of it. So I think we need to be considerate of these things.
But for example, in this case, with the couple of, battery percentage points here that we burnt to going through this, I don't see it as a particularly unique change, right, as compared to what we're already tend to be doing. But it's an important topic, absolutely, that we all need to consider as we're doing this art form.
Yeah, I think it's a really important consideration. I find it very troubling, this side of it. Personally, similar to Adam, I think while this piece is not expressly about that side of AI, it's engaging with the idea as a whole, and this is something that is happening, it's going to happen, that I think the more immediate urgency, for me at least, lies in a deeper kind of cultural understanding of the implications of that, and this feels like one avenue into it. Is it worth the environmental impact of it? I can't say. I'm not sure if many things are, but I do think it is, there's a power with directly engaging with the subject matter you're actually talking about, as opposed to just referencing it at a distance.
Okay, Trey had her hand up in the last round, so then. Well, I think one of the things that we wanted to do in this is not sort of say AI bad. It's okay a little, and yes, but it's more that, hopefully doing something that is offers the opportunity for people to engage and think critically about something, which needs to happen even, as this is already a part of our lives. So that's really the idea that the critical aspect is, okay, so if it's doing this, in what ways is it valid to use this, or should I take these things seriously in certain cases, right? So, and understanding when things are misrepresented, the ways in which that will have implications, right? So even as these are better at doing it than certainly the model we're using is, sort of understanding what, I guess to say it's to me more about the understanding of what's happening and offering this in a way that is somewhat fun and, gets people enjoying, seeing how things are misrepresented, but offering the opportunity for people to think about it in a critical way. So we're not really trying to offer answers or solutions and saying, yes, see how funny it is that this, it gets this thing wrong, but rather to say, you can start to see some of the ways that those things happen. I think one of the things that's particularly interesting to me when I first saw this as well, isn't necessarily always even the first thing that it picks, but you'll notice sometimes there's like a list of things, and I always find that to be almost more interesting than the first thing on the list. Like, why does it think these 5 things are possible? Like, why, I always find that to be really one of those interesting things. So, I mean, the more you work, if people are looking to those things, it, rather than saying, hey, look at this list, it's like, oh, this is a fun way to look at this list, you know what I mean, and see how it's doing those things. Landry?
I'm assuming that the little bar that grows in images is the metric of the confidence in the model point. And because we had your introduction, that felt like a pretty easy assumption to make. I so appreciate the sort of spirit that you're approaching this project with in terms of like building this understanding of AI in a sort of like intuitive and playful way. And I wonder when you are conducting performances with participants or not, your SPLICE or your presentation, do
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we've talked about quite a lot. In the cases so far, since this is kind of in the work in progress stages, we have only done it in something like this way, right? So there's prompts and people are aware of sort of, and we're offering these ways that people might interact, especially if it's the general public. And we have talked a lot about, I mean, so the UI that we currently have is sort of, you know, placeholder things, and we've talked about what we might want to do with making those. What we so far don't want is that it would be sort of something that someone would go to all the time, right? So it is meant to be accessible only in the case of like an event that's occurring, and then people in a particular place would use it and do that thing in a community. So not an app that you get and it's just like, I will go to this webpage anytime I want, although a lot of times it is just running and you probably can go there tomorrow and still use this thing. But the idea being that it's not intended for that, and at some point when don't just have it on GitHub, we will be taking it offline when it's not open for a community performance. So we've talked about how we might stage that, and it's still somewhat of an open question, but it's one that we have a lot of ideas and have talked about quite a bit. How to include that information about how to engage, how to do that for people who aren't musicians, who are not necessarily people who feel comfortable. Like, so there's, even aside from what you've kind of mentioned about like understanding how to make it work, there's also something of like, hey, get out of your seat, like actually walk around and do this thing, which oftentimes can be, for non-performers, something that, they're a bit shy about. So, we don't want people just sort of sitting there and be like, I looked at 3 things that happened to be around me, and then they're not as confident about moving around the space. So it is an open question, and if people have ideas, we're certainly open to hearing those types of things.
That brings up another thing. We've mentioned a lot about this confidence parameter, and kind of some of the ways we're thinking about it as we've been starting to work on developing our final version of this piece is how can we use that in a more compositionally robust way. So one is kind of this initial way where like you see the confidence go up and like it points at a door and it is a door, or a window but it says door, something like that, and like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But then maybe starting to filter out high confidence answers or low confidence answers, or not displaying confidence anymore. That is just telling you the answer. Like when you interact with ChatGPT does not tell you how confident, it just tells you an answer. And the natural human thing to do is just be like, well, that must be correct, or it's stated like a fact. So kind of explore how the presentation of confidence kind of allows us to maybe fall into either a more like trusting or less critical interaction with it.
Going off of that, I did actually like the colors you used, and I know I'm a Westerner, but there are stoplights in a lot of places in the world, so like the red to green, I think, and bigger to smaller, I think can work in most contexts. I mean, I might just be saying that. But have you ever thought about like reversing it too, maybe? And then also, once again, I like the idea of the confidence thing. I don't know if you made this connection, but like when performers are more confident, they tend to play louder. So I don't know if that was like something you thought of.
Yeah, our intention was that it was, there wasn't anything nuanced about what we're trying to do. It was trying to be like, it is confident, it is less confident right now. To your point, I think we're very open to kind of all these different presentations. One thing, even if we are filtering out some information, I think I'm very opposed to manipulating the data, or like saying it is confident when it is not confident. I think that kind of, that would like undermine kind of the opportunity for critique with it, unless we did it in such an overt way or something. But yeah, we're really kind of interested in these kind of different ways we can present it. Joey.
So I think with this one, although it's come out of the project or I guess we're kind of showing the work with the Little Artist League, that there's a progression that this work in progress is a part of. But really for this one, you know, it is much more geared towards the general public, but also acknowledging that that is a wide range that would include children or anything like that you were mentioning, that we want it to be as interesting and accessible, as multimodal as possible, so that, you know, to whatever degree we can have these things. We've talked also about ways of even, do we need, although we need the camera, like do you need to see the visual image? Like we've mentioned possibilities of trying to incorporate those in as well. So it's, although it's kind of coming out of this series that was for children, we're looking at this as being more publicly available, right? But again, for families, for, you know, anyone who's at an event. So we do want it to be something that, at the very least, you know, if a child is old enough to point a phone at something, they can enjoy it at some level. They might not understand everything going on with the confidence readings or anything like that, but it'd be interesting to see, perhaps also as part of this continuing cycle. I mean, I'm sure we're kind of in this mode of working on these things, and as this one is sort of wrapping up into the final version, we have a bunch of ideas for different next steps of our web audio project. So it'd be interesting to do some more. I'm sure we will. We are still working with Little Artists League, so we're still in contact with them, and we'll probably also have some projects with them coming up. There's nothing on the burner for it right now, but that's something that will probably continue. Mm-hmm.
I guess just like kind of writing on that question, do you have any plans to kind of advance this and make it more accessible to people, like say that don't have a smartphone, like just any plans that you want to have for after you finish this with the smartphone, whether it's going to make it more accessible to people who can't use smartphones / don't have the access to them?
From like, I think to some degree, I mean, this will work on other things since it's on the web. It doesn't have to be a smartphone, but there is inherently, we are working with certain technologies that need to, like it needs to be able to access the web and have a camera and speakers, right? That's just sort of inherently part of what this particular project is. And we have dealt with these issues around, like part of the reason why in some of the versions of the Little Artist League projects you saw, we went with the static, take a picture and upload it, was because then, you know, if you have special sensors, it limits how many you can have. So at some point it was like, okay, we're gonna get these color sensors, you know, how much does it cost to get how many color sensors we can get? And that's how many stations, that's how many, people can do it at the same time, right? Whereas if laptops, that people can upload things to and can run a max patch on as many as, they're just more accessible. People have laptops where they don't have these aware color sensors or whatever. So we've dealt with that in that way, but I think, at some point there's a certain level of technology that's just required. All right, let's take one more, and we're right at 6 o'clock, but Connor, you've had your hand up a while.
Yeah, there were some misperceptions of the AI that really fascinated me. Like some of them were, that's not what it is, but it makes so much sense that that's what it thought it was. Like it felt used to restless here with like a shopping cart, which is a shopping cart. But then there was a semantic one about, I pointed it at my journal, and it said, it's a jigsaw puzzle. And that's like the most memorable one for me. It's like, it's not just I can see it.
Yeah, I think you're getting at something really powerful that is perhaps actually, it's a great closing question to some degree because it's part of, I think, what brings us all to places like SPLICE to work with this technology and things like that. Like I know growing up in the age that I did, like I heard the cry of a modem and was like, I want to make music like that. And that was basically the rest of my life. You know what I mean? And it's not meant to be musical, right? It's meant to do something entirely else, right? And it just happens to have this really amazing sound. And it's like we provide the poetry, you know, we read into that as humans and we build those connections, right? So I mean, you are providing this beautiful, you know, metaphor, this poetry around like, you know, the jigsaw puzzle and building that connection. And that's certainly what we all do. We hear glitch noises, we hear, you know, static, we hear all these different things and we're like, well, that's so beautiful, let's use it, right? So I think it's almost all technologies, you know, humans are going to find those connections and build those bridges. I'm gonna give Sam the last word.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of quickly add, I think, you know, we are the ones creating, providing the meaning. I think with something that might seem somewhat unpredictable or provide either perspective or contextualizations that we might not intuitively rely on, that kind of provides these opportunities for us to like jump to like a slightly different position and make this kind of beautiful, abstract, or poetic connection between things. But thank you all very much for performing with us today.
Cheer for the chicken. The chicken, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.